Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of Progress America Unfiltered. I'm calling Tyler's apartment in a tiny mic. Just kidding. But hey, it's Tyler, and I'm here in person with Rhett and Jocelyn, coming to you live at the time from my apartment. And I'm really excited to have these two here. Rhett happens to be in town, and we'll talk about why later. And we thought we cannot pass up an opportunity to do a live episode from my home. So without further ado, let's talk about it. Rhett, what are you doing here?
Yes. And Tyler, thank you so much for having us in your beautiful apartment here. I'm just like, the artwork, the curation that Tyler has here is absolutely everything that you would expect from somebody as cool as Tyler. Like the dishes are monogrammed, the beautiful paintings on the wall, the guitars, all of it. Tyler, well done. And when the three of us were getting together, I was like, okay, I'm going to pick up some like little canned coffees for us. And I was like, looking at the coffee aisle, and I was like, well, we are a progressive YouTube channel, so obviously oat milk lattes are going to be the way to go. But this is just so much fun, and we're together right now, and it's so cute. And I am in town because I was doing some events for 420. We had a forum on Capitol Hill celebrating the fight for marijuana legalization and furthering the causes of justice on Capitol Hill, which was really interesting. We had some conservative and progressive lawmakers coming together just to talk about their stances on marijuana legalization, and then celebrating the continued fight for progress on this past Saturday at RFK Stadium in Washington, D.C. with the National Cannabis Festival. And it was a really great time. We did get rained out with some thunder and lightning. And so the thunder and lightning are what caused us to have to evacuate. And if you all want to hear about an evacuation story, while Representative Eleanor Holmes Norton was on stage and we got the call that we had to evacuate, I can tell you about, I know, it was so wild.
I do think we need to hear that story.
Yeah. So this was incredible, like in a bad way. Funny, weird, not funny, haha.
Not funny, haha.
So Representative Norton like is on stage giving her speech. It was fabulous. People were actually paying attention, which is like a very hard thing to get. I think people that attend a national cannabis festival to like pay attention to something like a speaker on stage, as opposed to like we had 2 Chainz as well. Like they were totally tuned into Representative Norton giving a great speech on the continued fight for legalization. I love that she called out President Biden and how much more he could be doing. I was like, it's always, I think, refreshing when we hear like Democrats call out the Biden administration and say, you know what, you don't get a free pass from us. Like, You know what I mean? Like, it's really important. But then I see like one of the stage managers running around on stage, and I like, as a former theater kid, know what that means. Not good. Yeah. So they run over to us and they're like, we have to evacuate. Everybody has to leave. And then the founder, Caroline Phillips, an incredible organizer, stepped on stage, told everybody we have to leave. And then Representative Norton offered to give me and one of the other like speaker chaperones a ride home with her like staff in their car. And I like was so excited, like, oh my God, maybe I get to be in a car with Representative Norton. But then we had to stay just to make sure everything could be handled well, which I totally understand. But I was like, wow, I want to hear what kind of music Representative Norton plays over aux. You know what I mean?
Speaking of music, I do need to know, did you get to meet 2 Chainz? Did 2 Chainz come out before it was rained out? 2 Chainz was supposed to be like a headlining act at this festival. We were all super excited. What happened with 2 Chainz?
Sorry, I was like, I have to get in the microphone over.
Tiny mic in Tyler's apartment.
So I did not see 2 Chainz, I regret to say. 2 Chainz came back on to headline after the festival resumed. A few hours later, we paused due to the severe weather. And then that was when I dipped out because I was like, I wasn't too sure at that point in time, like if we'd be called back or anything. And we told the rest of our guest speakers, which is my main job, to go ahead and not come in just for like their safety and like the safety of their staff as well. So I called it a day from that. And like, it was an early morning for me. And so like, I have an expiration date of like, if I'm outside of like the apartment or wherever I'm staying for like more than a couple of hours, it's about time for a nap time. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, 100%.
Like if I'm out for that long, I have to take a nap.
Yeah.
So that was what happened. Yeah, but it was a really good time.
I love that. I'm glad to hear it. Sad that it got rained out, but super excited that you spent this time in DC advocating for a sensible marijuana policy and legalization. And we hope that your efforts will be recognized very soon by elected leaders in power, and we're going to keep fighting for it. Now I want to turn to Jocelyn. Hello, Jocelyn. Welcome to my couch. How have you been? What's going on with you? And what news has been on your mind lately?
Well, you know, I'm glad you asked because there is a lot going on lately. But just like I wanted to expand on the bull pack stuff a little bit, if that's okay. So I know that your organization recently like did this big petition push for expunging people who were formally charged with possession. And I know that, you're organizing like opened my eyes up to the fact that like Biden came out and did this big flashy pardon, but it's not that straightforward, right?
Mhm.
I mean, can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. So this was something like under the leadership of Justin Struckle from Bullpack, which we covered. We had him on last week on our episode for 420. So I recommend going to watch that for sure. So we had basically this. So our first action that we ever took as an organization when Bullpack was founded in 2022 was a call to have President Biden call on these pardons, to deliver these pardons to the people that were suffering with marijuana convictions on their records. And so we saw that President Biden came forward, gave those pardons, but it really had this kind of effect of like people thinking, okay, that's all. And for like people that aren't really paying attention to this issue, like, I mean, I have the benefit of this is really somewhat of my full-time job advocating for marijuana reform and expungement, people thinking that this is done. And absolutely that's not the case, because the application portal for people to access those pardons was something that was closed for an extended period of time. And then when it finally did open, it was like a multiple hour process for people to sit through, shift through bureaucracy. And like, I think that like it's also really important to remember, like whenever we are asking people to like take on that additional administrative burden of absolutely anything, like we're asking people to look into systems that wronged them for the answers of how they can push the ball forward. And like that's absolutely incorrect. So what we were doing is calling on this system, this pardon system, to be automatic, right? So like making this automatic, informing the people that do have access to pardons or were pardoned that this is something that they can immediately go forward with, extending, or I guess decreasing that burden on them, because it's like a pardon doesn't really mean anything if one, it's not communicated effectively, and two, like if it's actually inaccessible, right?
Absolutely. That actually reminds me of something that Justin said on the episode that I've been thinking about a lot, which is that like, justice isn't justice if you can't access it. It doesn't matter if you're doing the right thing if the people who need this help and who need it the most aren't able to access these tools. So that's really great work. And I think you summed that up really perfectly.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And like we were talking about just like how the world is on fire right now, but there are always going to be some glimmers of hope, and it's always at the like the forefront of the people that are organizing, whatever that looks like. And like this is something I get to do for my job, but absolutely like I always have to give credit to the people that like are actually like the ones that are harmed by this system, right? Like cuz like if their voices are not being listened to, then like absolutely why are we even doing this work? So like listening to people that don't have access maybe to like the political system in the way that like so many of us that work in politics do, to say like, okay, like this is our job to further their cause. And how can we be like co-conspirators in this? Like how can we support their efforts in a way that like furthers justice as the ideal?
Well, and I think a form of oppression that I become increasingly passionate about is bureaucratic and administrative complexity as a form of injustice. And that's something we don't really talk about because there's a lot of shame around, oh, I don't know what my healthcare actually covers. I don't know what my lease actually means. Like, I don't, and that is intentional.
Mm-hmm.
It's built to make us feel stupid. So we don't speak up and are like, wow, I have this very thick 20-page document that outlines like what my lease is like, but like, what does that actually mean? It's on purpose.
Yeah,
and behind
absolutely.
every single thing in America, there is a serious paywall and a serious amount of logistical complexity. So when I found that out about the cannabis pardons, I was like, this is everywhere. And I think it's something we have to be louder about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, it's another example of who this country was built for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing is, if you have access to the resources and you have access to the lawyers, or you have the time to read the 20-page contract because you're not working 3 jobs, or you have the time to, advocate for your rights in front of your landlord because, you don't have 5 hungry mouths to feed, it really shows that, yes, you're right. Like these things are built in, these loopholes are built in for certain people to be able to enjoy them and exploit them and receive the benefits. And then the rest of us who have to work for a living, who don't have time to do these things, who don't have time to argue for our rights to exist or our rights to not be exploited or our rights to not be locked up for the rest of our lives because of a small marijuana possession. The rest of us end up suffering. So I think that's a great point. And, you know, that's what I think sensible policy means. I think a lot of these policies and, like we were saying, the pardons, they don't mean anything if they don't have the functionality. And that's something that I studied a lot in my grad school. It's great to have a great policy, but how is that policy being rolled out? And how is that policy actually showing up in fruition? And sometimes they're two different things. Sometimes they're two very different things. So I think that's really heavy, but really important to think about. But there's hope in that we know what's going wrong, which means we know how to fix it, right? At least that's how I try to think about it.
Yeah, I feel like so much hope, like being with you two and just like talking about all the good things that we are working towards and we care about so much. And I remember we were talking like last week, like, so we had like our little company dinner a few nights ago, and it was so much fun to see everybody. It was so cute. It felt a little bit like prom. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it was really fun. But while we were there, we got some news about mifepristone. Do one of you want to talk about that a little bit?
I'm happy to. I think I've been talking about it throughout scattered episodes on this show. In case you missed it, a Trump-appointed Texas judge tried to overturn the FDA's approval of mifepristone, which is a commonly used drug to aid in self-managed abortions and terminate pregnancies safely and effectively. It's been used for multiple decades. It is safer than Tylenol. And yet this Trump-appointed judge tried to take it off of the market, and it would affect millions of Americans across the country, not just Texans. Long story short, there was a contradictory ruling, and the Biden administration appealed this ruling, and we got word from the Supreme Court actually at our dinner while we were all there. We thought about stopping the dinner to do an emergency episode, but we decided against it. But we got word that the Supreme Court ruled that mifepristone can stay on the shelves as the court cases continue and the proceedings continue in the Fifth Circuit District Court, whatever it's called. So long story short, mifepristone is still available for now. Everything is still safe for now. The emphasis is on for now. And we are going to have to look to the Fifth Circuit of Appeals or the Fifth Circuit Court to see what they're going to end up doing and hope that they do the right thing and keeping this widely known, safely used drug available for those who need to safely and effectively terminate their pregnancies. Do y'all have any thoughts on this? It's good news. It's good news. It's good news. The Supreme Court did a good thing. It's not over, but I don't know. What are y'all's thoughts?
It's hard to have hope right now about this, but I think you're right. And I think it's important that we do acknowledge when things are going our way so we don't, I don't even know what the word is, but it's important to explain the truth, because I think one place that the right wing really makes a lot of ground is by accusing us of being despair mongers, especially around things like abortion, the climate, things that actually are existential dangers. We need to acknowledge, like, okay, people still can access abortion in this country, and we need to like be talking about the ways they can do that also, so we don't scare people who might need those services and they're seeing all these like, oh, I'll get locked up for seeking an abortion. Like, we don't want people to feel that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think like celebrating the small wins is something that's so crucial to us, like in our longevity in the movement. Like, so whatever that looks like, just like celebrating and like really like letting people know that they have these continued rights, like while we fight for justice in the future, is incredibly important. And I think that this kind of ties into the topic of marijuana legalization and expungements into this like overarching view of like what is bodily autonomy, like how do we have access to like the things that we are putting into our bodies, to like people's ability to control and choose if they want to be pregnant or not. Like that is all very important to this like issue of like, okay, is the Supreme Court or is any court or Republican official going to tell us like what we can and cannot put into our bodies, what we can and cannot do? Like ultimately every person will know best what their circumstances are if they choose to access marijuana, if they choose to carry a pregnancy. This is all about bodily autonomy. And like that is what the right wing like absolutely has set their sights on, is like thinking that the people of this country are just like too juvenile to make decisions for themselves in whatever capacity that looks like. So then they like put this like big like state in between these people and the decisions that they're making. And then they want to say that they believe in limited government, which is the most absurd thing in the world.
Yeah. No, people have said it. People smarter than me or funnier than me have said it. But, the small government party is making government so small it can fit inside your uterus, right? Like, that's really what they're trying to do here. So, call it out when you hear this small government stuff. And also, as we wait for the courts, don't think that's the only thing we have to do. There are tons of resources that we've talked about that you can share with people that in your life that may need it or that you may need eventually. There's If When How's Reaper Legal Helpline, which helps people understand what the abortion access laws are like in their state and how to access abortion safely and help them with any legal defenses if necessary. If you're in a state where that's necessary, we can link to that in the show notes and make sure you have that resource. And while we're still waiting for the Supreme Court, contact your representatives. Let them know that you're still thinking about this and that there are still things that our elected leaders can do to keep abortion access available and safe for everyone, no matter where you live. Talk to your local representatives, state representatives, federal. We can keep this going. We don't just have to sit like ducks and wait for the courts to maybe do the right thing. Yeah. Do you want to add?
Yeah, and I don't know if this is going to sound conspiracy theorist, but I don't care. I think it's important to see that the thing tying all this together, whether it's racial injustice, class injustice, healthcare injustice, misogyny, whatever, is this plan to create a servant class in this country that is not able to access economic autonomy and bodily autonomy and cultural autonomy. It's all this big thing. So a couple guys at the top can exploit our labor.
Absolutely.
And it's all connected. It's all the same thing.
Yeah, and I think we all saw over the weekend the Elon Musk drama of it all on Twitter, how he cannot sell these blue check marks to people. He can't even give them away. But it's when he's talk about the ruling class, I always think about that too, is just these people with so much money just inherently now have so much access to power. And they're not doing good things with it. They're not paying taxes with it. They're not helping people with it. They're helping themselves with it. And it does, I don't think it comes off conspiratorial at all. It's it really just is the reality, right? This society, American society for so long has been pay to play. And I think that's where we are right now. But the way forward from that is continuing to hold ground, activate for things that matter. And I think celebrating the small wins, as we can have them and as we earn them, right?
Absolutely. And not to bring it full circle, but again, we say this every single episode, but community is at the center of resistance. Community is at the center of progress. And so that's why I'm also very glad to have both of you here today and to have been in community with you while you were here, Rhett, and just have you in my home and talking about these things and showing up for each other and sharing our knowledge with each other. This is what it looks like. This is what community looks like. You don't have to have all these facts memorized about marijuana policy or abortion access or Elon Musk's latest rants on Twitter, but it is about showing up with the people you care about, sharing your thoughts and feelings, sharing your fears, and sharing your hope for the future as well, and knowing that this is all it is. And this is the future Republicans don't want, is a fun, eclectic, diverse group of progressive young people sitting together, talking about the problems of the world, but knowing that there is hope that we can fix it.
That's exactly right.
Does anybody have anything else they want to say to wrap up this episode?
Oh my God.
Well, this has been Tyler's tiny mic in her apartment or whatever I called this episode at the title. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Rhett, for flying all the way from San Francisco to see us. Thank you, Jocelyn, for coming all the way to my apartment. And everyone, thank you for watching. We'll see y'all next time at Progress America Unfiltered. Goodbye.